My husband and I come from the same background. The only difference is that his mother isn't of that ethnicity, so he wasn't raised in the culture like I was. When we started dating, I helped him reconnect with his roots. This eventually led to him reaching out to his estranged father's family and becoming close with them. I think my mother-in-law has sort of held that against me ever since. Throughout the course of our relationship, she has made multiple comments about how she doesn't like the amount of emphasis I put on my heritage. When we told her I was pregnant with twins, she later said something about not wanting her future grandchildren to care about that stuff like I do. I've learned to ignore her comments because trying to explain myself to her has never helped. And I try to avoid conflicts whenever I can. My husband and I decided that the babies would have a first name from our culture, and their middle name would be a typical American name. My parents did the same thing with my name too, so it was just a continuation of that tradition. My mother-in-law ended up seeing texts between me and my husband where we said the middle names. But she assumed that we were talking about first names, so she went out and got the babies matching sweaters, with the names printed on the front of them. She showed the sweaters to me after they arrived. And I thanked her for the gift but didn't correct her on the fact that those were the middle names. I was sort of peeved that she had snooped through text messages to try to find out the names before we told her anyway. So I didn't want to give her their first ones on top of that. Last night when she was over at our house, she told me how relieved she was that we had chosen normal names for her grandchildren, and not a ridiculously difficult to pronounce name like mine. My husband asked what she was talking about. She repeated herself and he told her that actually, the babies did have names just like mine and he expected her to learn to say them. She brought up the text messages and the sweaters she bought, and then my husband explained our plan for their names. She got really pissed at me after that. Said I let her look like a fool for accepting the sweaters instead of telling her the actual names, which we still haven't shared with her, and that she'd be calling them by their middle names since that's what she knows them as now. My husband ended up asking her to leave. And after she was gone he said he wasn't upset at me or anything, but that he thinks I should have just told her she had the wrong info, instead of lying. I have a beautiful wife who loves to serve others. We bought a home down the street from my family. I have a sweet sister who likes to crash at our house with her friends. My wife normally is pretty easygoing until recently. My sister's friends have been leaving messes, mostly towels on the floor after using our pool. My wife got upset picking up after them every day. I have asked my sister to make sure the house is clean after they leave and it has been better. My wife also complained that some of her perfumes / clothes personal items have gone missing. My sister said it's not her. I believe my sister. I just don't see her doing that. I told my wife and we agreed to just replace them. Last week my wife made a couple of pans of cinnamon rolls from scratch. One pan was for us, the second pan was for a coworker's family who is experiencing a tragedy. My wife went to the gym. I went to work and my sister and her friends came by. The one pan wasn't enough for her and her friends. They wanted the second pan of cinnamon rolls and my sister texted my wife asking if they could eat them. My wife said no. They ate them anyways. My wife upset went and bought new locks. When I came home my wife handed me a new key and told me that she didn't want anyone else to have a key to our house. I tried to calm her down and tell her that I would just go replace the eaten cinnamon rolls with store-bought ones. My wife decided this was her hill to die on and said no, my sister lost the privilege to come when we are not home. Replacing stolen items wasn't good enough anymore. My mom called and asked if my sister could use the pool as a back-to-school party. I was under the impression my mom would be there. I said yes. My mom was at work and our schedules clashed. The easiest solution was for me to change the locks back so they could come into the house. My mom didn't come with my sister. When my wife got home after the party, it was a mess. She sent me photos. She called me the A for changing the locks without talking to her about it. Keep in mind she did too, then told me I broke her trust. She wasn't safe in her home because she keeps getting robbed and I refused to put an end to it. I did talk to my sister. Then my wife let me know she was staying with a friend for a while. Am I the A here? I feel like I have tried to right any wrongs that have happened between my wife and my sister. I talked to my mom again and let her know my sister isn't allowed over without me home. I asked a friend's wife who is a maid to come deep clean our home. So if / when my wife comes home it's clean. The last thing is my mom asked me to help cover my sister's cheer. She is on track for a scholarship. I told my mom I would pay half of my wife's things were returned. If not, the money was going to replace the stolen items. Also, my sister was invited to homecoming. She wanted me to buy a dress. I told her no for not following our home rules, and the money I saved for the dress is going to pay for the maid. I did replace the locks again. I also am planning a romantic dinner I will make and clean up. I heard a lot about the cinnamon rolls. Someone on here gave me the idea to make them. I am for a dessert. My sister had a bag of my wife's things. More than I thought was gone. Most items are in poor shape. The big thing is she had my wife's grandmother's ring I thought was in the safe. I had no idea it was gone. My sister said that she found it on my wife's nightstand during the party. She forgot she had it on when she left our home. The ring isn't valuable, it's just sentimental. I told my mom who the ring belonged to. My mom lost it. My sister is now grounded. My wife is coming home. I am staying at a friend's house. Until we can work some of this out. I already stated it, but I did put the locks back on my wife bought. My family doesn't have that key. My mom called my wife last night and asked what my sister can do to fix / replace the damaged items. My wife said have her meet me every morning at 5 a.m. I decided to tag along and see what my wife had planned. Trying to support her in whatever punishment she decides to do. You know, the cinnamon rolls. My wife's co-work's 4 years old is in the final stages of cancer. My wife's plan is for my sister and her to prepare breakfast, get their other kids up and ready for the day. Start laundry, basic cleanup. So her co-worker and his wife can spend as much time as he can with the sick child before work. My sister was silent the whole time coming back home. I can tell it really hit her that her life isn't as hard, even being grounded. My sister was set to marry a guy who was a complete douchebag. He seemed like a nice catch to any outsider. He was tall, handsome, very confident, a doctor. Basically the sort of guy any woman would swoon over. Unfortunately, he was a sociopathic, unrepentant narcissist, devoid of any empathy, who would take out his anger on anybody he felt beneath him and seemed to enjoy doing it. You know how basically they say, don't look at how your partner treats you, look at how he treats others. And that's how he'll eventually treat you. My sister didn't pick up on that. I picked up on it early. This guy was really mean. Would berate and insult people for the smallest thing and would lose his cool with anybody who looked at him the wrong way. He started doing it to me, and I told my sister early on, this guy's an asshole. She was like, nah, you two will eventually get along, you just got off on the wrong start. I told him I've seen him do that to other people, but she seemed to think, oh, but he's nice to me, I'm the special one. Maybe I can change him. Or I have no idea what she was thinking. After about 2 years together, when they were engaged, the cracks were evident. My parents loved him, his dad and my dad go way back. They both went to the same medical school together and have been close friends for decades. Her fiancé is also good friends with my 2 older brothers. After 2 years, my sister was realizing this guy was an asshole. He's always been an asshole, and he won't change. There was a really painfully obvious example one day when we were having dinner, and my sister's fiancé and my dad were having a discussion about something political. My sister tried to offer her opinion into the discussion, and they both snickered. Then this guy just started berating her and ripping into her in front of everyone, making her feel this small. I could sense her pain. She was just quiet and just sat there taking it. I was thinking, what are you doing with this guy? He has no respect for you. He has no love for you. Another time our family was at this dinner function where a lot of big people were around. My sister's fiancé completely left my sister alone at the table with me, and was sitting at this other table with 2 women. Very obviously flirting with them semi-drunk. He just left her all alone at the table. I asked her what was wrong, why was he ignoring her? She told me they had had an argument earlier and this was his way of punishing her. You see what I mean when I say this guy is a complete sociopath? My sister and I are really close, And even though I'm younger by far, little brothers aren't devoid of wisdom. And I've been urging her from day one to break up with this guy before she gets in too deep. Well, now that she'd spent 2 years with him and was engaged, she was obviously in too deep. And she used to tell me about all the outbursts he has, how he treats her with no respect. We often had long discussions, just me and her, where she'd spill open like a can of beans and just divulge all the bullshit that he's put her through recently. Sometimes she'd cry and I'd be there to help her out, but she still seemed to want to stick with him. She actually convinced herself that he loved her behind all that horrible treatment, and couldn't pull herself to cancel the engagement, what with our parents, his parents, everyone counting on it. She knew they'd all say she's crazy, turning down this smart, handsome doctor. I kept urging her to break up, but she stuck with the "he'll change" or "he loves me" deep down excuses. It all came to a head when one day she very publicly exploded at him. We were having a huge dinner, both sides of our families, and I was sitting next to him. He kept bullying me the entire night. "Move your elbows over, couldn't you wear something a bit more presentable? Stop sticking your hand out like that, it's rude, don't you think you've had enough of that?" If I asked him to pass a bowl or the sauce or something, he'd hand it over but then pull away and be like, "Say please, say thank you." He was smiling the entire time, laughing. My 2 older brothers were also snickering. They didn't seem to mind this guy was publicly bullying me and having fun with it. He and my dad started having one of their conversations again. And my dad started airing out all his general frustrations and disappointments regarding me. And they started both talking about my life openly in front of me. Her fiancé then turned to me and started openly lecturing me, and when I tried to ignore him, "Hey, are you listening to me? What's the matter with you? Your dad never taught you any respect?" My sister just then basically exploded. She was sitting at the other side of the table, guessing she didn't want to be near him. But she was watching what was going on the entire time. My sister just then basically exploded. She was sitting at the other side of the table, guessing she didn't want to be near him. But she was watching what was going on the entire time. I'm 19 years old female was traveling alone on an 11-hour flight today. And a guy in his 20-year is in the same row as me. I was exhausted because I only got 4 hours of sleep before the flight so I could sleep on the plane, but this guy, we'll call him C, keeps trying to make conversation. C starts off by telling me he's autistic, and then asking me if I like K-pop, and he keeps non-stop talking and rarely gives me a chance to speak, not that I wanted to. I tried to be polite because I have ADHD and I understand how social cues are difficult, so he probably can't tell I'm not in the mood. Over the course of the next 20 minutes I tell C maybe 5 times I want to sleep and put my headphones on, and each time, C begins speaking to me after maybe 2 minutes of silence. Finally, I was able to sleep for around 4 hours, but when I woke up C started up again. I'm still really tired, and I had some personal issues the day before my flight, so I'm also socially exhausted. But I let him talk for a bit before I start watching a show on my phone. I tell him maybe 5 separate times that I'm trying to watch a show, and that I'm not interested in talking to him right now, but maybe later. C still keeps trying to talk to me, and when I snap a bit and tell him I'm getting a bit annoyed, he goes into a full-on self-hating, "I'm so sorry, I'm horrible, God, I'm just gonna shut up now" rant. And I feel bad because I should have been nicer to him, and I can understand emotions being too strong and spiraling. I tell C that it's okay, and I just want some time to myself as I'm not the chattiest person, but maybe later we can talk. I put my headphones on and watched my show, but C kept trying to speak to me, but this time I ignored him. Which was honestly a shitty move from me, but I just didn't have the energy at this point to interact with him. This was the wrong move, as he moved to get out of the row and stood in the aisle and began yelling at me. I didn't catch everything he said, but it was along the lines of, "Why can't women believe not all men are bad? Some men are on your side. I'm a nice guy, why are you ignoring me?" He storms off to the bathroom, and I take that chance to ask a flight attendant if I can change my seat because he really freaked me out, and I didn't want to have a panic attack on a plane. The flight attendants were amazing and got my stuff and moved me far away from him. I feel like I'm TA because he does have autism, and I could have been more patient maybe, and ignoring him was a shit thing to do.